Okay, things are darker now. Every day you want to retighten your horn wrap and go along with your lacing and tighten it up. I get about 1 to 1.5 inches every time I tighten it. I untied these strings. I want to peel this back and create 2 slits, and I'm going to slip a zip tie down each of them. This area of the wrap is going to be spliced, so later on when I cut individual strands to lock down through here, I want a pathway preserved by these plastic zip ties. Otherwise, once this dries, it's going to be really hard to get it to open for my little strands. This is the kind of blade I use for cutting small holes. I used the blade and the awl to cut these 2 holes, and I decided to stack the zip ties 2 deep in each hole. These create a pathway so that when this rawhide dries, there's a little bit of room to cut this last braid up into strands that interlock and pass down under the fork and then come out here braided. I'll show it more to you later, but these zip ties are gonna save me a lot of trouble later when it dries. And now I'm just gonna take these strings and tie them back down. Yesterday evening I added some moisture to this dry rawhide, just using a wet washcloth, and then the kitchen bag goes around the strands up underneath so that we protect all that leather from getting wet, and then you just tie it in a knot underneath the fork. So I look at the fork cover and see whichever side is higher. This opposite side is higher. So I've put a mark along here. I'm going to cut it, and I've got a cutting mat underneath so that I don't dare cut the layer underneath. You kind of score the surface, and then you can get going at one end, cut all the way through, and then bring it around. There we go. Hopefully my hands aren't in the way too much for you to kind of see what I'm doing. But this rawhide's about right. It's pliable, but it's not so wet that it's white look. Now I admit using kitchen shears might seem a bit unorthodox. I promise that I use my knife plenty. This just gives you such good control, and it kind of saves your hands for later on when you have to use a knife. Also, if you're new at this, you just, you go a little bit at a time. You maintain your 5 strands here, and you keep them all about the same width. And if you get up to a part of the strip where it's a bit narrower, you just use these scissors and go a little bit at a time, and it seems to work great. Okay, so once again, this is that curved knife that I use to cut my holes in tight spaces. Here's my awl. I just open the hole. Sorry, that was a little too close. I'm trying to do this and hold the camera. Because my rawhide is not too wet, the hole stays open, and I can just slip this into the hole. Hey, I did that one-handed. So, all 5 of these are up and through, and it may be necessary to cut my strands just a tiny tiny bit higher with a knife or the scissors once I pull them through. But let's give one a try here. My hands are so soapy I can't get a very good grip on the strand. So I'm going to pull them through. I've got some braiding soap on my hands. The moisture in these strings is pretty close to where I want it. I won't be braiding today though. So I'm just going to give these some more soap. I've got a 1-minute video on how I make my soap. Just going to rub some soap in here and then bag it up and get started working on the other side. Okay, so I trimmed that under layer at about the same height to match the other side. And I started cutting my 5 strands from this last braid. 2 of them go up, this first one to where the zip ties come out in that hole I made. And this second one into the lower hole where the zip ties come out. These just held a pathway down through the hole. Oh goody, that was a lot easier than last time I did one of these. The zip tie idea, this is the first time trying it and I'm really happy with it. Pass this down through that other hole. Okay, they're both in there and I'm going to pull them down tight.